Hey everyone, welcome back to D Squared Stories, an audio fiction podcast bringing you short serialized weekly stories. Today is the final chapter of Fun Facts and Psychic Possession Attacks. As mentioned before, this was maybe one of my favorites that I've written so far, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. Stay tuned to the end if you want a brief preview of what's next to come. But as always, without any further ado, let's get into a quick recap and then get started. Last time, I found Godfrey Smith, also known as Alpha Omega, while in a bail hearing for his trial in which he is alleged to have murdered his ex-wife. I ditched Sasha and jumped straight into Godfrey's mind, where I learned that Lawrence, the shady lawyer by day, elk powder peddler by night, for some reason had tied up a bunch of his assets in Godfrey's name, which now remained frozen. Lawrence saw through my ruse and called on all of his goons from Colin's circle to descend on Sasha and Micah. I can't explain why, but I was unable to use a psychic possession attack on him, presumably due to something under his eye patch. I managed to get Sasha to safety, but Micah was being held hostage. I snagged Godfrey's body to use him as my own hostage and set the stage for my final operation. Chapter 5. This one is just a normal trip to the zoo. I promise. Sabrina Meyer was a pretty blonde woman, a friend of a lady named Marge out in the breezy city. You might remember Marge as Tommy Fracasso's girlfriend, who, did that stuff that's in a bit of a gray area considering the level of explicitness on these stories. Sabrina, knowing that Marge's boyfriend was out of town, though not knowing that he was being a menace to society, would have been perfectly in character to invite her friend out for drinks. While it was somewhat difficult to method act as a girl's girl for an entire night after a successful psychic possession attack, per Operation's girls trip, an earpiece and Sasha on the other end, feeding me normal girl talk, managed to get us through to a point where Sabrina was helping Marge stumble back to her apartment. From there, it was easy to explore the apartment of an unconscious Marge. I was certain that I would be able to get dirt on Tommy. And I am semi-displeased to announce that I was completely right and saw things today that I hope to never see again. I sent a few key pieces of evidence Lawrence's way, delaying them that they would only show up in his inbox for our noon meeting. From there, I had to make a hair appointment. Harvey Richardson was a barber. A dang good one, as far as I could tell. He was doing a great job on his client's hair when I so rudely took over. Muscle memory can only take you so far, so I think I was about to get him a pretty serious negative review. That was unfortunate, but I knew he would survive it. Additionally, he is not a person above criticism, considering his boyfriend was none other than Colin Freiberg, aka Wide Colin. Yeah, Wide Colin had a boyfriend. One of 4 years, in fact. With my psychic possession attack of him complete, we were now knee-deep in Operation Trip Down Memory Lane. I sent a handful of photos of the two of them, lovingly embracing, cuddling, and being a relatively sweet couple, over to Lawrence's email on a delayed message. It would get there right around noon, while we were at the zoo as well. With that complete, I went to the bathroom to make a quick phone call. Sarah and Joshua Smith were the daughter and son of Godfrey Smith, who lived with their uncle, Damon, following the death of their mother, largely believed to be carried out by the hands of Godfrey. I, of course, now know that this is the work of Lawrence. The two trusted her uncle, and he was a good man, as far as I could tell. Godfrey could not stand him, as Damon never approved of the way that his sister was treated. That was enough of an endorsement by my accounts. The only issue is that Damon was far too willing to disclose info to complete strangers on the phone. I managed to get him to say he was at home and in his kitchen. With that, it was all too easy to get inside his head for Operation Guilt Trip. I gathered the two children and gave them the good news, which was that their father was not a murderer, but he was caught up in the wrong crowd. This laid the groundwork for me to coach them to make a heartwarming plea to their father's remaining humanity, to ask him for their sake, to turn his back on his alpha male comrades after what they did. With all three of us on the phone with him, I heard as he went through the mental anguish of realizing I could not be possessing all three of them at once. And when he started to break down into tears, that was the point when I decided this operation had wrapped up. Just to be sure, I gave Sasha, who had been observing him, a call. "Does it seem like he's not acting?" I asked. "I think he is for real willing to turn on them," she said. "Why are you doing this? How does this help us stop Lawrence?" "It doesn't," I said. "If I can turn one of these guys around for real, rather than just screw with them, I'm making much more of a difference doing that." "I thought you don't use your powers for things like that." "I didn't. I thought it made me safer that way. But look at me now. I'm hopping from body to body in a desperate attempt to keep myself from being at the whims of some of the worst people on the planet. If I fail and have to go out a loser, I at least want to make things right by someone." She stayed silent on the other end of the line for a moment. "Did you see him go through yet?" I asked. "Yeah, he's right near the hippos now. I can barely keep him in my sight. You better get in there now. All right, got it. And Eric? She said. Yeah, Sasha? I'm sorry I called you selfish. Thank you for helping me save Micah. Of course. Adam was a zookeeper. He was good at his job normally, or at least I assumed so, from the Employee of the Month title that he had appended to his name tag. I really hoped for his sake that none of these security cameras were all that good, or I would feel really bad about what I was doing. I had to make my final preparations for Operation Just a Normal Trip to the Zoo. A lot of this could potentially see Adam lose his job if it was recorded. But Adam seemed like a nice guy, so presumably saving Micah and preventing my powers from falling into the wrong hands would be something he would want to do anyway. This was how I rationalized it to myself as I hid a fully loaded tranquilizer gun near the gorilla exhibit. There were only a couple more things I had to do. To my dismay, the tiger exhibit was not as close to the gorillas as I remembered from coming here as a child. I also do not remember this number of grown adults choosing to get their face painted like a tiger. Nonetheless, I continued. After everything that I care to share with you was complete, I set an alarm for Adam with some key information. I just had to hope that the timing would work out. With that, I returned to my body. I awoke in a sleeping bag, in a beanie, on a park bench with trash surrounding me, wearing tattered gloves that seemed ill-fitted to my hands. My body felt as uncomfortable as hell due to this highly unnecessary anti-homeless infrastructure trend, trying to make this bench as painful to sleep on as possible. I looked up to see Sasha looking around for me, wheeling around Godfrey. He, since this morning, had become a lot more compliant, and now we only had him discreetly duct taped, and let him speak freely. He expressed remorse for not speaking up sooner about Lawrence. Whether or not he'd truly turned over a new leaf was not critical, though. My plan was Godfrey-proof. Even if he started to act up at the last minute, I would be prepared for that. Sasha came over to me and pulled out something out of her bag. It was the final phase of my preparations, and the most important. Lunch. This was no ordinary hoagie. This was the buffalo chicken cheesesteak hoagie from Goose Mart. It had caramelized onions and banana peppers on it. It was an absolutely critical part of my plan, because I was really hungry, and when I was hungry I could not think straight. I housed it in an amount of time that made both Sasha and Godfrey visibly disgusted with me. I could not care. "And you're sure this is going to work?" Sasha asked. I shook my head. Not at all. She seemed exasperated with me, not that I could blame her. We walked into the zoo and paid our admission. As I continued to see tiger-painted faces around, I felt more and more confident that everything was coming up me. We wheeled Godfrey to the meeting point, just outside the gorilla exhibit. The painted tiger faces followed us, up until we were just outside the enclosure. Lawrence stood there in a black hat and black leather jacket. His silvery hair flowed in the wind. He would almost look kind of hardcore if I did not know he was a huckster lawyer who sold ground-up elk as a multi-level marketing scheme. Micah was there, looking agitated until he saw his sister. "Sasha!" Sasha did not respond, staying stone-faced until she had her brother safely back with her. "Let him come over here." Lawrence scoffed. "Mind controller hardly looks to be cuffed, but I guess we can take care of that." One of his tiger-faced goons came up behind me and cuffed me. I was pretty sure this was Colin. However, as an extra precaution, I noticed he had these earbuds in his ears. So that's how they planned to stall me out if I tried to use psychic possession flashbang. I just kept smiling as he did this. "Oh, and I bet you think it's all fine and good because your girlfriend or the traitor can grab the tranquilizer gun you dropped over there earlier. But that's not the case." One of his goons was holding the tranquilizer gun that I had Adam drop earlier. I just continued smiling. This seemed to send Lawrence into a frenzy. "Well, then how about this? I'm not handing him over. You'll have to pry him from my cold dead hands, and good luck with that without being able to use your thumbs." "We'll see about that," Sasha said. "Assisted psychic possession attack." Fun fact number 24. I do not need my thumbs to be attached to my hands to perform a psychic possession attack. They just need to, by some means, be inserted into my ears. From an insulated bag of ice packs that she carefully smuggled into the zoo, Sasha pulled out my 2 surgically detached thumbs. She thrusted them into my ears, and I prepared my psychic possession attack. Lawrence looked completely taken aback by this. Colin had been too slow to stop her from getting to me, and she pulled me loose as my body collapsed into her arms. Lawrence started to bark. "What the hell is that?" he yelled. "Never mind it. Show yourself. There's no one here stronger than me, and you can't take control of me. I'll knock you out as many times as I have to until I have your body." Lawrence's voice annoyed me, made Eric mad. Eric feel less smart now. Eric not able to do sentences. Eric walked out new gorilla body, out of the unlocked enclosure. Eric sneak up behind Lawrence. Lawrence turn around. Oh, for the love of... Fun fact number 25. Psychic possession attack work on gorilla. Same rules. Just know where gorilla is and what gorilla face looked like. This gorilla named Sheila. Eric smashed Lawrence on the pavement. People in zoo scream. Eric swiped big gorilla arms at Lawrence's goons. Eric let Micah run over to Sasha. Eric gets shot in the back 5 times by tranquilizer. Eric quickly stumble over to Lawrence, pull off eye patch, peel back eyelid. Ah, Eric see now. Eric sleepy. Eric feels Sheila's body falling asleep. I woke up back in my own body, which was good because that narration had to be starting to get annoying. Sasha had let me go to embrace her brother for a moment. The henchmen were all still staring nervously at the gorilla and staying away, not yet noticing that I had been pushed out of Sheila's body. Everyone else fled at this point, due to the gorilla escape. "You morons!" Lawrence yelled in pain. "Stop them! Stop them!" Sasha and I stood back up, as she stood behind me and put my thumbs back into my ears. I let out a chuckle. I watched as Lawrence grabbed at where his eye patch should be, and saw the moment his face fell into despair, realizing it was no longer covering his eye. "Yeah, that's right, buddy. The cat's out of the bag. I finally figured out why I had such issues taking control of you." Fun fact number 26. Heterochromia is a condition in which someone can be born with 2 different colored eyes. That has little to do with me, but it is a fun fact. And more importantly, it is also why I was never able to use my psychic possession attack on Lawrence. Lawrence's bright blue eye, a scar cutting right down it, was exposed to the world. He shook in uncontrollable anger as he started charging towards me, hoping to get to me before I could take over his body, but that was no use. With just a flick of my head, I launched my winning psychic possession attack over him. I felt my spirit take control of him. I felt every bit of his pain from being slammed on his back by Sheila. I felt what it was like to view the world from about an extra foot taller. I turned to his henchman. "It's over now," I said. "The hell it ain't," Colin said. He pointed the tranquilizer gun he had picked up from his friend and attempted to fire it at me. I felt as the darts failed to pierce through the ballistic vest that Lawrence wore under his body. It was unsurprising to me that he came prepared for a second tranquilizer gun. "It really is," I said to him. I pulled out Lawrence's phone from his pocket. I started flipping through his documents and all the illicit details he had on everyone. Colin had cultivated not only a misogynist fan base, but a homophobic one as well. Tommy's stuff, I think, gets to go without saying. Lawrence had already secured his own intel on Godfrey as well, to keep him in line while his assets were tied up. "Well, well, well, look at all of this," I said, showing off some of the photos. "Lawrence has some dirt on all of you." Colin charged towards me. I used Lawrence's hand to press into his face, keeping him at a distance. This disparate difference in strength was almost the same between the gorilla and Lawrence. It was easy to keep him away. I turned to everybody. I smiled. One by one, I went through the phone and deleted everything he had on them. I then turned and showed them the phone. "There you go. I deleted all the dirt he had on you. You're all free now," I said. "But I have everything I need myself if I ever need it again." I stood there, proud of myself and what I had accomplished. Now they would all be free and out of Lawrence's grasp, and everyone could. "We don't care. We want to get rich off elk powder. We're never going to accept women as equals. We're going to take your power and use it to take what we want," Tommy yelled. I saw Sasha frown and then turn to me. It was her turn to say, "I told you so." "Gentlemen, I can understand where you're all coming from." I turned to see Godfrey had begun to talk. Perfect. He would set them all straight. "It can be tempting to have riches and powers, but the Lord tells us that we should leave that all behind and follow him. Let us give our money away and follow the Lord." It took less than a couple of moments before everyone started arguing amongst themselves. Unsurprisingly, these were not the types to be open to living a life of poverty and devotion to God. As I held Colin's face down, I became aware of a need to move into the final phase of my plan. I walked over to Sasha and held my hand out. "Sasha, the thumbs, please." She nodded and handed them over to me. "These have caused so much pain and agony. It has become clear to me that no one should have this type of power. I walked over to the tiger exhibit. Previously, I had Adam feed the tigers a little less than normal. The horde of independent thinkers followed me like sheep over to the tigers. They watched and started wailing as I held the thumbs up to the tigers. "No, you can't do this," Colin whined. "I can. I started this and now I'm going to end it." I tossed my thumbs out to the tigers. The hungry tigers quickly chewed them up beyond recognition as I turned my face back to the crowd. "Once I return to my body, I will never be able to possess anyone ever again. This is the end of psychic possession attacks." I placed my thumbs into my ears one last time and returned to my body. Everyone stood in silence as I stumbled back to the ground and laid there. Everyone watched as Lawrence regained control of his faculties as well. He frantically looked around, not understanding what just occurred. "You think you won now that you've seen my face?" he asked. "This is far from over. Far from over." A fearless zookeeper named Adam returned with an entire security detail. The bunch of them marched over to detain him. "What did you just throw into the tigers exhibit?" he asked. "I had a reminder on my phone to check the security cameras for the tigers for some reason, and I saw you throw something in there." Oh my God, I yelled. "He chopped off my thumbs and fed them to the tigers, I think." The security team gasped and continued restraining him. I showed off my thumb stubs, now newly bloody again from scraping them on the ground. Lawrence roared in defiance. "That's a lie. He's a mind controller. You useless hacks. Back me up here." He gestured to his crew, who now seemed unsure of their direction. "Are you all with this guy?" Adam asked. They scratched their heads and looked to one another to see who among them would answer. Nobody seemed to step forward at first, but then Colin spoke up. No, sir," he said. "We're not with him. We're all, furries," Tommy answered. "We're the city's local furry club, and we were just minding our own business at the zoo when this guy attacked this other guy." Adam eyed Tommy and his tiger-faced friends with almost more disgust than when he thought they were the ones who helped attack me. He and the security shooed all of us away from the zoo as they dragged off Lawrence. I reconvened with Sasha and Micah outside the zoo. "Oh my gosh," Sasha said. "That had no business working." "I don't know what you're talking about. Everything worked out exactly as I planned it." "You planned to cut off your own thumbs and feed them to tigers?" Micah asked. "If it came to it." I got a little quieter as I saw Colin come over to me. All three of us stood off with him defensively. He, for his part, stopped seeming nearly as aggressive as he was before. "Hey, so, seeing as Lawrence is going to prison most likely, and Godfrey's going to spill on his crimes, I guess I just wanted to check. Are we all good?" "Are we all good?" Sasha yelled. "You kidnapped me," Micah yelled after her. "If you're just going to go back to being scumbags online," Sasha said, "then absolutely not. We're not all good." Colin stepped back a bit from this verbal assault. He brought his hand to his chin and seemed to focus intently. Then, slowly, and I mean very slowly, but surely, the wheels started to turn in his head. It took an awfully long amount of time, but the man was thinking, and when he was done thinking, he smiled and turned to us. "But you can't do anything without the thumbs, so it doesn't really matter if we're good," he said. Sasha let out a growl of frustration. Micah even punched Colin a few times, but he just laughed it off as he went back to his buddies. Now, having nothing that we needed, we were none of their concern, and they started to make their way off and back to their own respective cities. Micah was still stomping and huffing, but Sasha and I looked at each other as they finally got far enough away. "So, hospital?" she asked. "Yes, absolutely. They're still there, right?" I asked. Sasha pulled out a bag, one that she had concealed earlier during my possession of Lawrence. From inside, she pulled out my 2 real thumbs, not the chunks of compacted chicken cheesesteak hoagie that she had handed me that I had Lawrence toss to the tigers. "I told you it was a critical part of my plan." Micah stared on in disbelief. "Wait, what? You still have those?" he asked. Sasha smiled towards me. I nodded to let her proceed. "Interesting info number 3. Last night we took over an off-duty surgeon while he was asleep and had Eric's thumbs surgically removed, and then checked to make sure we could still use them for psychic possession attacks. Interesting info number 4. We tested Eric's psychic possession powers on a live-streaming chimpanzee. Leap of faith that a gorilla would work too. And interesting info number 5. We released the info to federal authorities about the murder, so they should be stopping by the station any minute now to take Lawrence into custody. Sasha and I gave each other a big high five, or high 4 on my end. She also freaked out, having completely forgotten that I was still bleeding a little bit. You guys are so weird. Are you actually going to start dating now? Hospital first. We'll figure out the rest later, Sasha said. Completely agree. We made our way to the hospital, where we made up a fake story about cutting off both my thumbs in an accident. Fortunately, since this is the city, they have seen weirder. There was a strange look of familiarity on the surgeon's face as he reattached them. I wonder maybe if people do subconsciously remember a bit of what they do while under my control. More likely, though, I was just imagining that look from the shock of the sheer coincidence that he was the same guy that was going to be putting them back on. Lawrence insisted on representing himself in his trial. He lost, if you can believe it. Turns out ranting on the stand about the mind controller who ruined your life does not endear you to the jury. Godfrey was acquitted on his trial. He was never able to withdraw the money that Lawrence had moved into his accounts. The second everything was unfrozen, it was showing up as having been transferred to an unknown account. They figured somehow Lawrence had managed to transfer it to an offshore account. They did not know that Godfrey awoke in the middle of the night to make the transfer into Sasha's account. Fun fact number 27. Psychic possession attacks still work, even after my thumbs have been surgically reattached to my hands. Micah and I teamed up to use my talents to make a positive difference in the world. We targeted specifically people who deserved to and could afford to have a bit of their ill-gotten wealth taken from them and got into the hands of people that needed it more. I let him handle the research, as we chose to no longer go after highly public, high-profile targets. Once we get a game plan, that is when I do my thing and take control. Sasha is doing well. When she can spare some time from her busy coursework, she helps Micah and I with our schemes, and even makes some time for the occasional date night with her freak show psychic boyfriend. She has not explicitly said it, but I think she has started digging back into her mom's murder again. With the new power of being able to take control of minds, I think she is thinking of new angles she might be able to use to figure out who did it. She seems to be keeping this private until she has a solid plan for it, though. As for myself, I had a bit of a seismic life shift on account of that one hoagie I decided to get from a different Goose Mart. I spend a lot of time pushing back on ideas that I think are too risky. I really fear getting myself into a situation like I had at the zoo. However, I find I have a lot fewer boring days living a bit on the edge like this. I guess what I really want to say is... Fun fact number 28. My name is Eric James, and I have the power to take possession of the body of anyone I choose by sticking my thumbs into my ears. This is the story of how that power almost got me killed, and how I learned to use it for the better. Thank you for listening to Fun Facts and Psychic Possession Attacks. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone who you think might also enjoy. Next week, as per usual, you'll be getting a teaser trailer for the new series, A Mystery on Planet Lamachus. It's a sci-fi series with a bit of intrigue, world building, set on a bizarre planet with even more bizarre creatures. If you're not a big sci-fi person, I still think there's a lot to dig into on the mystery aspect, and I hope you will tune in. You can stay up to date on FFPPA by following us on social media. That will be D² stories on just about any of the major platforms. Thanks again for listening. Hope to have you listen again next week.